I'm Wilf Nichols, this is Homegrown, and it's fall season. This week I'll be talking to Carl White, the head gardener at Munn Botanical Garden. He's been at Munn Botanical Garden for 18 years and he has lots of practical information to pass along. Simple tasks done in the fall will save so much time in the spring. He'll show us how to cut back certain types of perennials, how to protect apple trees, and a whole bunch of other things. Simple precautions can go a long way. Debbie Preston will talk about those plants that give us so much pleasure in our backyard in the summer and can be brought inside for the winter, but there are a few simple ground rules that should be followed. I'll be back to talk about the native red twig. It's a plant that's found on many of the trailways in the province. It looks beautiful in the fall and well worth going on a nature walk to see it. So, lots to see, stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Now here in our province of Newfoundland Labrador, it's like we're waiting forever in the winter to really get going in the spring. Winters seem a little long. And when spring does arrive, we are gardening like crazy. There's lots of jobs to do. Well, if you get going in the fall, there's a few jobs you can do that's going to save you a bit of time in the springtime, and who better to show me fall gardening jobs than Carl White. Carl is the head gardener at Munn Botanical Garden. Carl, welcome.
Thank you.
And how long have you been gardening here at Munn?
18 years.
18 years.
Yes.
So you've gone through 18 or 19 winters. You probably know what you're doing.
Hopefully. And there are several things you can do in the fall that will save you a bit of time in the spring. One is cutting down your large perennials.
Well, this is one of the largest perennials. This is up here, isn't it?
This is the largest perennial in the botanical garden.
Wow. And it's Campanula?
Campanula latifolia.
And you cut it down to what? About 12 inches?
Roughly 8 to 12 inches. There's a couple of reasons for that. We like to remove the bulk of the material in the fall when we have time to do it. I can come back in the spring now and take a bucket load of stalks off this as opposed to a cart load. Oh. So we have the time in the fall to do it. We don't have the time in the spring. That's the reason to cut your perennials down. We leave it this length so that if there's only a light snow cover, the snow will collect in around the stems on the crown of your plant.
So the stems actually trap the snow? Trap the snow. And then the snow will protect the plant, I suppose?
The snow protects the plants. Another reason for leaving the stalks rather than cutting them right to the ground is when we get on it here in April, before anything's starting to grow, we know there's a plant there. We get out digging.
Of course.
So we know that plant is there. So they're markers and they're snow catchers.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. So why don't you show us, we got this prairie mallow right here. Show us how to do all this.
Okay. Pretty basic. You grab a handful. You want to do them one at a time. You're going to be here a long time,
right?
And the key to doing any amount of this work is stack your debris so you can pick it up easy. You don't want to be scattering it all over the garden.
I know, I'm a real messy gardener like this. And the other thing is good sharp tools.
Well, that's the key. That's why I never lend these secateurs to anybody.
So you do this with every perennial, do you?
Except there's a couple of exceptions. Peonies, we cut right to the ground, actually below the ground. If you dig around by the shoots, you'll actually see the bud there for next year. Yeah. So clip your shoot as close as you can to that bud, because peonies are susceptible to a couple of diseases that we are certainly better off without.
Okay, well, why don't you come show us those buds so we know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, off to the peonies, you lead the way.
Okay.
So here we are in amongst the peonies, and those you're cutting right the way down to the ground.
Right, actually a touch below the surface of the soil. As you can see, what you have to be careful for is there's a bud there on this stem.
I can see it, yeah. Probably the viewers can't, but there's a little bud down there. So you're cutting right the way down it, and
right to that, and that's the growth bud for next year, which we want to make sure we don't cut off.
Right.
And the reason this is one of the few plants, herbaceous perennials, that we cut right to the ground, and that's because peonies are susceptible to Botrytis blight, which can, if you leave the foliage, can travel down the foliage and into the roots and new buds.
All right.
So we want to avoid that, so right to the ground.
Now, So when the snow's flying, I suppose what you're going to do is mark this area with a stick to know where the peony
is what we've done already. You see these little alder sticks cut off?
Right.
They're placed in around because peonies are not one of the earliest plants to come up in the spring. And again, we don't want to be in here digging and liming and fertilizing and walking on our peony buds. So we put a little circle of sticks in around to mark it, because we don't have the stems to show us where the plant is in the spring.
So cutting back for tidiness, cutting back for disease problems. Now, do you do any sort of winter protection? I mean, are all these hardy?
All the plants in this particular garden are hardy, but we have some plants that are not winter hardy in Newfoundland, so we do a couple of different techniques for those.
So we'll go and see those in a minute, but obviously there's some beautiful plants in the fall that you certainly aren't going to cut back for a while, and let's have a look at those. These ones are Chinese lanterns. Aren't they wonderful?
Yep, they're great. Little pumpkins.
Little pumpkins. They look like little pumpkins. Now this plant tends to move around a little bit.
It goes for walkabout. 10 years ago there was a little clump in there.
Wow.
Now there's none in there,
and they've
all moved out to the edge of it. So it's a great plant. It's certainly a good plant for the fall, but it does take a little walk around now and then. So
well, I like to forgive a few things like this, because they give you so much pleasure in the fall. And another beautiful plant in the fall is this one over here, and this is an anemone. What's the species of this, Carl?
Japanese anemone.
Oh, this is Hupaensis.
Hupaensis, yes.
Right, yeah, it's a wonderful Japanese anemone. Another plant that might do a little bit of walkabout in the garden. It can come out from a bed and into a lawn, but as soon as you go over with a lawnmower, you sort of put pay to that. But Japanese anemone, another really nice plant for a fall garden. Don't cut it back too soon. And look at foliage, look at late flowers. It's nice to cut some things back, but boy, you might as well enjoy the garden to the bitter end.
That's for sure. They will be left till they fall down on their own.
Okay, so when we come back, Carl is going to show us how to do some protection of plants so they won't die through the winter time. So join us again soon. Welcome back. I'm in the undergrowth here down in the woodland bed, and here is a rather young apple tree. And Carl, what are we going to do with this?
We are going to protect this tree with the burlap from sun splitting the bark in the wintertime. When the bark is frozen and you only get the sun on one side, it can expand the bark in one area and cause it to crack.
Wow, okay.
So we're going to cover with burlap.
So can I help?
You certainly can, if you could hold that right there.
Okay.
So we'll give it a wrap with the burlap here.
Yeah, okay.
For the protection from the sun.
Right.
And then we're going to cover it with wire.
Wire?
Wire, chicken wire,
yeah,
to protect the stem of this tree from the rabbits.
Right.
Which,
oh yes, of course.
In the big snow of 2001, rabbits discovered apple trees, and they really like them. So even when we don't have a big snow fall, they still come back to the apple trees and said, I remember you, you're very tasty.
And of course this is something that can happen all over this province. Rabbits or hares will eat apple trees or lots of other deciduous trees because the bark will have sugars just underneath, so they can really girdle a tree. And let's face it, if this tree is girdled even at one point, this tree is dead, because the bark is what, or the inner part of the bark is what really transports the food up and down the tree. So this is a really good idea. So what are you going to use for this?
It's just got some chicken wire.
All right. Can I hold it again?
Yep. Great.
Now, you're doing this in 30 seconds, and probably you'd take more than like 3 minutes to do it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but after 18 years, you can do this pretty darn fast, and this is fast. Wow.
Well, we don't even have to tie that now. That'll just hang there, and the poor little rabbits will certainly be discouraged.
Unfrustrated. Poor things. Okay, well.
There we have it.
Great job. So, what else are we going to do?
Well, maybe we could build a teepee.
Okay, we're going to go build a teepee. So Carl, hydrangea, are these tender then? Would these die?
No, these are perfectly hardy here for our climate. The reason we're covering these plants, again, there's a couple of reasons. One is to try and keep the small animals out of there from chewing on them during the winter, and the other is to actually protect them from actually just being crushed and squat and broken off by the snow load.
Physical damage.
Damage,
right,
as opposed to wind or sun or rabbit damage.
Okay, so build me a teepee.
Okay.
What are you going to do?
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to corral this plant in so it's more manageable. So I'm just going to tie a piece of this cut up shade cloth around here.
Right.
And you can use anything. Burlap works good for this. The best thing I've ever found for tying up plants like this is old pantyhose. It's strong,
really?
It stretches, and it's soft, and it won't rub the bark.
Wow, good. Recycling, I love that.
So this is pretty basic. Yep, take a couple of those for me.
Good. I love being an assistant.
There we go. Pretty basic stuff here. Just put in your 3 stakes.
Right.
Now we need a piece of string around there to keep them together.
Wow. It's so simple and so effective. So is there any bad news with this?
Well, the first year we had these hydrangeas, I teepeed them, and a couple of our rabbit friends actually crawled in underneath the teepees and pruned every single shoot.
All the way down to the ground.
Well, actually if I had to come here to prune it, I wouldn't have done it much different. So actually they helped us out the first year, but they haven't been back since. So.
Good. And now you're always using burlap. What other things could you use?
Depending on the application, you can buy netting.
Right.
Netting is good sometimes to go over like a big conifer, keep all the branches together. But as for teepees, I don't know of any other material that works near as good. You certainly don't want to be using plastic.
Right, I've seen people use plastic, and really plastic is like
it's a mini greenhouse.
A mini greenhouse,
so
right.
You got a hot day in February, or a sunny day in February, the temperature inside that teepee will probably go up about 10 degrees.
Wow.
So we just a couple of staples.
Yeah.
Don't have to go overboard with them.
No. And then when would you take this off?
This will come off depending on the weather, but certainly by about first or second week in April.
Wow. Okay. And certainly it's very effective. These hydrangeas are looking great. They've been here what, about 4 or 5 years now?
I think this was our fourth season.
4th year, and we had a great lot of flowers on here. So so think about building a teepee. Think about protecting your plants from sun, from freeze and thaw, and protecting your plants from animals that might be around to chew bark or chew some succulent stems. So last thing I suppose we should talk about is some of the perennials that are not too hardy.
Okay, we can go have a look at our lilies that you can't grow in Newfoundland.
The lilies, you can't grow them in Newfoundland.
Can't grow them here, no.
And we're growing them?
We've had them for, we've had them for 5 years.
Has been 5 years.
You can't grow them here, that's the problem.
So, let's go see some lilies. So here we are amongst some beautiful lilies. Okay, they're not so beautiful anymore, but they were beautiful white scented lilies. And it's a lily called Lilium formosanum, variety Pricei. Formosa, or what we know as Taiwan now. And so this is a lily that's native to Taiwan, and you can't grow this here, can you?
Well, obviously we can grow them, but they will not last through the winter unless they're protected.
Okay.
We've had these here now, we've got them through 5 winters, and this is how we're going to get them through a 6th.
Okay, well, and what are you using? This is beautiful stuff.
We are using our homegrown Botanical Garden Black Gold, known in the industry as leaf mold.
Leaf mold, and what sort of leaves are there?
These are all birch, maple, elm, beech, Whatever leaves are around the city of St. John's,
Okay.
or we collect, we leave them for a year,
Yeah.
we shred them, we leave them for another year, we shred them again, and in the third year, this is the material that we
And
get to
it's
use.
lovely stuff. And how much do you put on here?
I'm going to put on 8 to 10 inches around each one of those,
Right.
these lily bulbs,
Yep.
and this will insulate the soil so that those bulbs will be kept good all winter.
And of course this leaf mold, not only will it insulate these bulbs, but it will also rot down and really be a great soil amendment as well.
That's correct, and in the spring when we're looking for our bulbs, we'll carefully brush this stuff away, and as we're brushing it away, we'll just scatter it over the rest of the bed, and that'll become our spring mulch.
Leaf mold, it's just beautiful stuff. Carl, it's been a delight. You've shown us so many jobs to do in the garden. Thanks so much for giving your time.
My pleasure, anytime.
Okay, well there's a few jobs for you for the fall, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Now it's over to Debbie Preston. She's going to tell us about taking outside plants inside for the winter.
When it comes to the end of the summer, often we want to bring in some of the annuals that we've grown outdoors in our garden. Things like this fuchsia that I grew in a pot out on my deck, or a geranium that you could have in your flower bed. At the end of the summer, before the frost comes, we think we might like to bring them inside. In that case, we want to make sure that we check the plants over really well for insects and disease. And we want to make sure that we get them before any frost comes, or even before the night temperatures get to be too much below 10 degrees Celsius. Because they start to harden off at that point, and when you bring them into the warm, dry air of your house, it's a bit too much of a shock, and you'll get a lot of yellow leaves develop. So around early September is a good time to start checking the plants and think about bringing them inside. The first thing we want to do is make sure that there's no insects that have moved into the pot. Usually I check underneath the pot, make sure that there's nothing under there, and I just slip the root ball out of the pot and have a good look at it. See if there's anything that's sort of eaten out or moved in. I can see that there was something that was sitting in around here, so I can usually check that over really well. You could use a soil drench of insecticidal soap down through the roots and wash off all the leaves with insecticidal soap. You can buy that either in a ready-to-use spray or in a concentrate that either one of these. This one you would mix with water it down through the roots, or washing it all over the leaves. When you do that, I use a soft cloth mixed with the solution. Now, I haven't mixed this up. You want to make sure that you use gloves when you do this as well. And make sure you get underneath the leaves, because it tends to be where the insects and the eggs are laid, just on the undersides of the leaves, in the crevices of the leaves, where the leaf axils are, where they join the stem. That tends to be where the insects hide. And make sure you clean up every leaf really well, go over it, prune off anything that's dead or dying, so you don't bring any insect and disease problems into the house. Clean it up really well. When you do bring them inside, keep them isolated from your other houseplants. Don't mix them in with your other houseplants right away. Usually I put them all together in a sunny window and leave them about 2 or 3 weeks before I move them to the other houseplants. You want to check them in about 2 weeks. It takes about 10 days to 14 days for eggs to hatch inside the house, eggs of aphids or mites and things like that. So you check them over really well and probably wash them with the insecticidal soap again. That way you've kind of knocked down the population again really well. And after maybe 2 or 3 treatments of soap in the house, then you're safe to move them in among your other houseplants, and you can have beautiful fuchsias, geraniums, impatiens in the house all winter long. And next spring, move them back outside. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Debbie. Now, there are some plants that look beautiful in spring, but I'm going to show you a plant that looks so much better in the fall. The beauty of this shrub is the red bark. This is called the red osier dogwood, sometimes known as the red twig, and it's a plant that's native to Newfoundland, Labrador, and right the way across the country all the way to British Columbia. Normally you'd find this plant near watercourses, riversides, anywhere that's a little bit moist, but this native plant is actually quite adapted to rather dry situations as well. The reason we grow this plant is because of the bark. So put it at the back of a perennial border, and then things will be showing up in front of it, fine. But in the winter time, this is when this comes into its own. Because imagine this beautiful red bark showing through white snow. In order to keep that bark red, you've got to do some pruning on this plant, and you don't allow anything to be more than 3 years old. So 3-year-old stuff you cut right down to the ground, and so all your growth on this plant is 1, 2, or maybe 3 years old, and then it's beautifully dark red. If red's not interesting to you, maybe yellow will do, and there's a variety of this same species called Cornus flavomira, and that one is yellow. There's another one called Cardinal, which is almost pinkish. So put it in a place, keep it well pruned down to the ground, the old stuff down to the ground, and let the young stuff poke up through the snow, and you've got some beautiful winter interest in your garden. I said this is really well known in the trade. You can find this at most local nurseries. Just ask for red twig or red osier dogwood. It's interesting, these plants have been used quite a bit by native people as well, right the way across the country, and we have information that some of this was actually used as a very old cough medicine. Apparently bits and pieces of it was boiled and used as a cough medicine. So the more we look at native plants, the more we read about native plants, the more we learn how fascinating our flora is. So leave a spot in your garden for red osier dogwood and enjoy it. You know, 30 minutes flies on by, but that is our show for this week. On the final show of the season, we'll visit with John Hearn and his garden along the Salmoneer line. He has a real reputation for growing some of the best vegetables anywhere. We decided to join him midsummer and then return to the garden in the fall. You can see why he wins all those awards. On her final installment, Debbie Preston will talk about how to properly propagate your annuals. It's a great thing to know, and it's a great idea if you want to pass on some of your best annuals to your friends. On a recent hike, I came across a native Newfoundland plant called the Northeastern Rose. It is a plant that has beautiful foliage, a beautiful flower, and it may well have strong medicinal properties. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.